Welcome back to my channel, Famous and Fabulous. For more than 40 years, Hollywood has kept a secret that nobody wants to talk about. On November 28, 1981, Natalie Wood, one of the biggest movie stars ever, went missing from a boat in the middle of the night. The next morning, people found her body floating in the ocean near Catalina Island. She was only 43 years old. The story that everyone was told was that it was just a sad accident, that she slipped while trying to tie up a small boat. Case closed. But here's what they didn't tell regular people. Natalie was super scared of dark water. People heard her screaming for help for 15 minutes while someone on that boat just sat there and did nothing. Her husband waited 4 hours before he called anyone for help. And the bruises on her body told a completely different story than what they wanted everyone to believe. At the center of all of this is Robert Wagner, her husband, and the person that police say was involved in what might be one of Hollywood's biggest covered-up mysteries. His story has changed so many times that nobody can keep track. And now that he's 95 years old, his silence says more than any confession ever could. What really happened that night is still a total mystery. Nobody has ever explained why he waited so long to call for help. And whatever Robert Wagner is still hiding all these years later might just disappear forever in those dark waters where Natalie took her last breath. The night of November 28, 1981 was supposed to be easy and fun. Hollywood's biggest stars were getting away to Catalina Island for a relaxing weekend with friends. Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner were there, along with actor Christopher Walken, who was working with Natalie on her newest movie, Brainstorm. The boat's captain, Dennis DeVerne, finished out the small group of people on the boat called the Splendor. To everyone watching, Natalie and Robert looked like the perfect couple. They were married twice to each other because their love was supposedly so strong that they couldn't stay apart. They got married the first time in 1957, broke up in 1962, and then got back together in 1972. 9 years later, they were still together, still looking like the perfect Hollywood love story. But something darker was going on that weekend under the surface. Something was wrong. They had spent the whole evening drinking a lot at a restaurant on the island. When they got back to the boat, they'd had so much to drink that people got louder and angrier faster. According to what many people said, things were getting tense between Robert and Walken. Some people say it was about Natalie's movie career. Others whispered that it was about something more personal and private. What everyone agrees on is this: there was a big fight that night. Here's what makes Natalie Wood's story so sad and strange. She wasn't just any actress who happened to drown. She was a woman who had been scared her whole life of dark water. This wasn't just a small worry or fear. It was a really deep fear that started from something that happened when she was a kid. A fortune teller had told her mum one time that Natalie was going to die in dark water. This prediction scared her for many years and years. Everyone who knew her, her friends and her family, all knew about this fear. Natalie's sister, Lana, said later that her sister would never, ever have gone near the edge of the boat at night on purpose. Not even if the water was calm, especially not when there was a storm happening around Catalina Island like there was that night. The idea that Natalie had gone out on the boat's deck in the middle of the night when the water was rough, wearing just her pajamas and socks, to tie up a small boat that was making noise seemed really silly to anyone who actually knew her. A woman who was scared her whole life of dark water wouldn't just go out by herself into a storm all of a sudden. But let's go back to that fight on the boat. Captain Davin said later that he heard people yelling really loud coming from the cabin, things being thrown around, the sound of glass breaking. Robert Wagner would admit later that he got so angry that he smashed a wine bottle during a fight with Walken. This was something he forgot to mention when he first told police what happened. The fight got worse and worse. Natalie, who was stuck between these two guys and their fight, tried to get away from it, and then at some point around 11 at night, she disappeared. Robert said he thought she had just gone to sleep. But this is where things stopped making any sense at all. Because what happened after that would start a chain of events that still doesn't make sense more than 40 years later. When a wife goes missing from a boat in the middle of the night, especially when it's stormy outside and his wife is scared of drowning, most husbands would do something right away. They'd call the Coast Guard. They'd shine big lights on the water. Every second would matter so much. Robert didn't do any of that stuff. Natalie went missing at about 11 at night. The Coast Guard didn't get a call until 3:30 in the morning. That's 4.5 hours when nobody did anything. And a woman who wasn't a great swimmer was maybe struggling in cold, dark water. The rescue boat captain wasn't even called until 5:11 in the morning, almost 6 hours after Natalie was last seen. 6 hours. When someone falls off a boat, the first hour is the most important. In really cold water, people can get too cold inside their body in just a few minutes. Every single second counts when someone falls overboard. But Robert, who knew these waters really well and had a lot of experience with boats, sat around the whole night before he called anyone. Captain Davin told people something that was even more weird about those lost hours. He said that Robert told him not to turn on the boat's searchlights, not to radio for help, and not to do anything that would show that Natalie was missing from the boat. According to Davin, Robert's orders were very clear and really scary. He told the captain to do nothing and to keep the lights off. Nobody has ever given a good reason why he waited so long to call. The order to keep the lights off and not call for help made investigators have a lot of questions that they're still trying to answer today. By the time people in charge finally started looking for her, it was way too late. At 7:30 that morning, they found Natalie's body floating about a mile away from the boat. She was still wearing her soft flannel pajama shirt, a puffy down jacket, and socks. The boat's small dinghy was found nearby, gently bumping against the shore. The first investigation went really fast, maybe too fast. The officials said she drowned by accident almost right away. The story they told was simple. Natalie heard the small boat bumping against the big boat, went to tie it up, and somehow fell into the water. But the proof showed something very different. The medical exam showed that Natalie had drunk 0.14% alcohol, which is way more than the legal limit. She had also taken medicine for being sick and pills for pain, a mix that would have made her sleepy and clumsy. But it wasn't what they found from the medicine test that was the biggest problem. It was the bruises. Fresh bruises covered her arms and legs. There were marks on her face, scratches on her neck, and scrapes on her cheek. Some of these injuries could maybe be explained by falling into wild water, but others were in places that showed something else had happened, maybe before she ever got in that water. Experts who looked at the dead body later said that several of the bruises looked like they came from someone fighting to get away, like the kind of marks that show up when two people are struggling with each other. And then there were people who saw things that nobody wanted to listen to. Marilyn Wayne and John Payne had their own boat parked near the Splendor that night. Around midnight, they woke up to sounds that still scare them all these years later. A woman's voice, really desperate and scared, calling out over the dark ocean. The woman was asking for help, screaming that she was going under the water. The sounds went on for about 15 minutes. 15 terrible minutes of someone fighting to stay alive in the ocean. But what scared Marilyn and John more than the screaming was what they heard after. A man's voice, calm and like he didn't care, answering from the direction of the boat with what sounded like he was just saying hi. Just those two words saying he heard her. And then nothing. Nobody jumped in to help. Nobody tried to save her. The desperate screaming finally stopped, and the night got quiet. Marilyn tried to tell the police what she heard, but in 1981, when Robert Wagner was a huge star and Hollywood was already trying to hide the truth, her story was thrown out. She said later that she even got scary messages telling her to shut up about what she heard that night. Who the man was that calmly heard a drowning woman calling for help from the direction of the boat is still one of the weirdest parts of this whole thing, and the reason he did nothing to help her has never been told. For almost 30 years, the case was closed. Natalie Wood's death was put away as a sad accident, and Hollywood forgot about it. Robert rebuilt his career, acting in the TV show Heart of Heart, and became famous again. He got married again, this time to actress Jill St. John, and started a new life while people slowly stopped asking the old questions. But some people never stopped asking those questions. Captain Dennis Davin was one of them. For years and years, he had said that Robert's story was true. He told the police what he was supposed to tell them, that Natalie must have slipped while tying up the dinghy, that it was a terrible accident, that nobody was to blame. But keeping that lie inside got harder and harder as time went on. In the early 2000s, Davin made a choice that changed everything. He decided to tell the real truth. In television interviews and later in a book called Goodbye Natalie, Goodbye Splendor, he told what really happened on that boat. According to what Davin said now, the fight between Robert and Natalie wasn't just yelling, it was violent. He heard things being thrown in the cabin. He heard shouting that turned into something way worse. And then came quiet that came before Natalie went missing. When Robert came out of the cabin and told Davin that Natalie wasn't there, the captain wanted to start looking for her right away. Turn on the lights, call the Coast Guard, do everything they could to find her. But Robert stopped him. Davin says now that he was pushed and scared into not saying anything in 1981. Robert had so much power and was so important that it was clear what story had to be told. And Davin, who was young and not sure about himself, just went along with it. But so many years later, he couldn't pretend anymore. In 2011, he called the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office with his new story. He said he thought Robert was responsible for what took place with Natalie, that if they had called for help right away, she might be alive now, and that he had made up a story in his first police report because he was told what to say. The police listened this time, and in November 2011, they officially said they were going to look at the case again. Looking at the case again brought new people and new tools to the mystery. Doctors and experts looked at the dead body report again with new ideas and better knowledge. What they found proved what Davin had been saying all this time. Some of Natalie's bruises weren't the kind you'd get from just falling into water. They looked like they were made before she went in the ocean. The marks showed that maybe someone grabbed her or there was a fight. Based on these new findings, the Los Angeles County Doctor's Office made a big change in July 2012. They changed what was written on Natalie Wood's official death paper, taking away accidental drowning and putting in a new reason for dying. Drowning and other things we're not sure about. That one word, unsure, meant a lot. It was the officials saying that the first explanation wasn't complete or was wrong. It meant the case wasn't finished anymore. It meant someone might be responsible for what happened to Natalie that night. The changed death paper also had something really important written on it. Some bruises might have been made before she went in the water. That sentence went against the accident story and opened the door to something scarier. But the biggest change came in 2018 when the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office did something that had never been done before. They told everyone that Robert Wagner was a person of interest in the case. A high police officer named John Carina didn't use soft words when he talked about Wagner being a person of interest. He told news people that Wagner's story just doesn't fit together, that things he said over the years didn't match, and that Wagner refusing to talk to people looking at the case again made them even more suspicious. Because here's the thing about Robert Wagner. His story has changed so many times that investigators can't even count them all. In 1981, right after Natalie died, Wagner described a normal, quiet night. Yeah, they had drunk stuff, but there were no big fights, no yelling, no problems. He said that Natalie probably went to tie up the dinghy and accidentally fell over the side while he was somewhere else on the boat. But that story fell apart over time. A lot of years later, Wagner said there was a big fight that night, but not with Natalie. He was quick to say, but with Christopher Walken. The fight was about Natalie's job, he said. Walken had been telling her to work harder on her career, and Wagner didn't like another guy telling his wife what to do. During this fight, Wagner said he got so mad. He grabbed a wine bottle and smashed it on a table. It was a moment when he got really angry that he had not told police about at all in his first statement. This fit perfectly with what Captain Davin had been saying for years, but it also showed something bad. Wagner had lied about the wine bottle. The question was easy to see. What other stuff did he hide or change? The things that didn't fit together didn't stop there. When Wagner said he first knew Natalie was gone kept changing. His reason for why he didn't start looking for her right away changed depending on who was asking. And his story about what he did during those important hours before he called the Coast Guard never made sense. When people started looking at the case again in 2011, detectives naturally wanted to talk to Wagner again. They had new information, new people who saw things, and new ways to look at proof. They needed to hear what he had to say now that they knew so much more. Wagner said no. He would not talk to them. He turned down many requests to sit down. He would not answer their questions. And he definitely would not explain why his old stories didn't match. His choice not to help showed a lot. Carina said in talks that Wagner not wanting to help figure out what happened to his wife made people think bad things. Someone who didn't do anything wrong would probably want to clear his name and stop all the questions once and for all. Wagner's silence was matched by Christopher Walken's silence. The actor who saw at least some of what happened that bad night gave one talk to Playboy magazine in 2012. In it, he basically told the same first story. Maybe Natalie went to fix the dinghy and fell in. That was everything. Since then, Walken has said no to everyone who wanted to talk to him, which adds another strange thing to a case that is already hard to figure out. But while Wagner and Walken stayed quiet, someone else was getting louder. Natalie's little sister, Lana Wood, has used many years fighting to learn the truth about what took place with her sister. She has never thought the accident story was true. She has never agreed that Natalie would go near the water that night. And she has never stopped saying that Robert Wagner was to blame. In so many talks and public times, Lana has shown the things that don't match in Wagner's story. She has asked questions about what he did that night, and his choice not to help with people looking at the case. She has asked that they make him answer questions under oath. Make him explain the missing pieces and things that don't match that have been part of this mystery from the start. In 2021, Lana put out a book about her life called Little Sister. my investigation into the mysterious death of Natalie Wood. In it, she told painful secrets about her family and put forward scary questions about how the case was looked at. She also told something that Natalie had told her a long time before, that when Natalie was 16, actor Kirk Douglas had hurt her in a bad way during a meeting that her mum set up to help Natalie's career. Natalie had come back from that moment really shaken up, telling her sister that Douglas had done her wrong. While this isn't straight connected to what went down on the Splendor, this made clear all the ways that Natalie could be hurt through her life and the way that powerful men in Hollywood were not punished. Lana's fight for the truth isn't just about figuring out a mystery. For her, it's about remembering her sister the right way and making sure that Natalie Wood isn't just thought of as being in a sad accident. It's about making those who were on the boat that night and might know more be responsible. Robert Wagner is 95 years old right now. He lives in a quiet way, almost never going out in public and celebrating his birthdays with family in Aspen, Colorado. He has built a life that doesn't focus on that November night. But that November night has never really gone away for him. The case is still officially open. Even though police said he was a person of interest, Wagner has